Hey, call me Louis. This is my spot. LuiSpot.
And if things were to get out of hand, it would once again be Russia's sole responsibility. Russia's responsibility. And so if we decide today to be weak, if faced with someone who has no limits, faced with someone who has crossed all the limits he gave us, we naively say to him, I won't go any further than this or that. At that point, we're not deciding peace. We're already deciding defeat.
And you decide to say it, to send it, and that's a very strong gesture to decide to say that we might go that far.
I accept, and I assume it because it's the role of the President of the Republic in our institutions. The President of the Republic is in charge of national defense. He doesn't make comments. He makes decisions for the safety of the French people. What is at stake in Ukraine? A war that is existential for our Europe and for France. I hope we'll come back to it, because it's a key issue, subject. And so I've decided, because after 2 years of war, I want to remind you that we have systematically done what we said we weren't going to do, which also puts into perspective the very definitive statements sometimes made by some people across Europe. 2 years ago, we said we'd never send a tank. We did. 2 years ago, we said we would never send medium-range missiles. We did. We said we'd never send planes. Some are in the process of doing so. So, we've put too many limits, if I may say so, on our vocabulary. We're not escalating. We are not at war with Russia. Quite simply, we must be clear. We must not let Russia win.
But the French haven't understood, you were talking about vocabulary, under what precise, concrete conditions French soldiers would go to fight in Ukraine. Was it because the Russian army would make a decisive breakthrough on the front line? Is it because a key city, Odessa, for example, is about to fall? You weren't specific on that.
But perhaps I'm right not to be precise, and I'll say it again.
But the two conditions I've just mentioned are either science fiction or possible scenarios.
In your eyes. For some years now, we've all been living in a world where what we thought unthinkable is happening. This is the end of the carefree attitude I mentioned a few years ago. This is it. War is on European soil. Between Strasbourg and Lviv, less than 1,500 kilometers. Just imagine war is in this country. So it's not a fiction and it's not far from us. So all these options are possible. The only one who will take responsibility is the Kremlin regime. It won't be us. We will never go on the offensive. We will never take the initiative. France is a force for peace. But today, to have peace in Ukraine, we must not be weak. And so we have to look at the situation lucidly and say, with determination, will and courage, that we are ready to do whatever it takes to achieve our objective, which is that Russia should not win.
If we send soldiers over there, forgive me for remaining in this gloomy scenario, there'll be infantrymen, conscripts and airmen.
Okay, so we don't talk about it. But first of all, I don't wish it. I want Russia to stop this war, withdraw from its positions and allow peace. But you no longer believe that. But what's important here is, firstly, it's not my wish. But secondly, I'm not going to give visibility to someone who doesn't give it to me. That's a question for President Putin. But I say today, we've decided on this, and it's a change. We decided it in Paris. It's the start of a new awakening. Then, I tell you, we'll do what's necessary to achieve our goal. Because if Russia were to win, French people's lives would change. How would it change? We would no longer have security in Europe. Who can think for a second that President Putin, who has not respected any commitments, would stop there?
What's happening in Ukraine today also affects France's vital interests. There is a danger,
but the security of
France,
Europe, and the security of the French are at stake over there. And these are our vital interests. You're using a term that has particular connotations. I say security.
And you yourself have used the term existential threat.
But
that means it's our very existence that's at stake in the game.
Say it, and I assume it. We've already suffered the consequences of this war in our daily lives. We've already suffered these attacks. Many of our hospitals have already suffered days and days of dysfunction due to Russian aggression. We've already suffered the consequences in Europe. The price of gas The situation of our economy, the cost of cereals, the economic upheavals that have followed are the consequence of this war launched by Russia. And if Russia wins this war, Europe's credibility will be reduced to zero. Will be reduced to zero. What would be the credibility on our soil of a power, the European Union, of its members who let this happen? What would be the security of Europeans? Do you think that the Poles, the Lithuanians, the Estonians, the Latvians, the Romanians, the Bulgarians could remain at peace for a second? And I'm not even talking about Moldavia, which may not be in the European Union today, but which would be threatened in a second.
You're saying it in a nutshell.
I say it's happening.
Putin won't stop there. If he wins this war, he'll continue elsewhere. He'll find other prey.
By
Is
us,
that what you're saying?
but by our past. We've already seen regimes that killed opponents at home, had authoritarian tendencies, and were determined to conquer everything they were allowed to conquer.
So Putin wouldn't stop there if he won this war.
But I think what I'm saying is a complete consensus from President Biden to the German Chancellor, everything.
All the leaders of
What I'm
Europe,
saying
so
here-
only our force, French, European, NATO, I don't know, can stop it. And it has to be stopped in Ukraine.
Today we need to have, to borrow an old Churchill phrase, the nerve of peace. To want peace is not to choose defeat. To want peace today is not to abandon Ukraine. Is it to wage war?
That's what they're asking you to
No.
do.
It's to be credible, to be strong and ready, to adapt to whatever choice Russia makes. And so, if war were to spread to Europe, it would be Russia's sole choice and sole responsibility.
Well, I guess there is certain bitterness when we stayed in contact directly, we spoke about this frankly. We did not go to Africa, we did not squeeze anyone out of Africa, but the Wagner Group, it started with some economic project in Syria, then it moved on to other countries, to some countries in Africa. We are supporting this group, but only from that point of view that it's a Russian group. We have not squeezed anyone out. It's just that African leaders from certain countries made agreements with the Russian economic operators. They wanted to work with them. In certain areas, they did not want to work with the French. It was not our initiative. It was an initiative from our African friends. I do not understand why should they feel bitter about anything. If an independent country wants to develop relations with some other country, including Russia, for example, Russia, we have not done anything to these former French colonizers in these countries. And I'm not being ironic because historically, in many of these countries, France was a metropolis, was a mother country, and they do not want to deal with them anymore now. So we have nothing to do with this. So maybe it's just a convenient stance for them to take offense and not to notice the problems, the issues that they have. Maybe this embittered emotional reaction from the French president, well, has to do with what's happening in certain African countries, among other things. But I know there are African countries that are willing to work with the French, to deal with the French. Other countries, they do not want to do that, and we have nothing to do with that. We are not trying to talk someone out of dealing with anyone else. We do not have any state goals there. We are just being friends with them. They want to develop relations with us. We reciprocate. So I don't think there is anything to take offense on.
Now, that sums it up for this video. What do you guys think? Share thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. Let's have a proper discussion about this without having me impose my opinions and ideas on this matter. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it so that the YouTube algorithm can know that this video was so much interesting and share it far wide to more avid viewers just like you. Subscribe and click the notification bell if this is your first time watching these videos, and so that you can be notified as soon as we make a new upload on videos just like this. My name is Louis. Until next time, peace out.